Wow, guys, I'm afraid that 2025 is probably going to have to be the year when we draw a line in the sand and start calling out all of the fraud and the misrepresentation and the lying and the thievery in crypto. If we're to move forward as a whole crypto movement, we've got to get rid of all of this nonsense. Just today, one of the most notable projects of late on any of the top 10 blockchains is being accused of some very bad things. And almost simultaneously, a very vocal proponent of that same ecosystem is suddenly finding out that he was dead wrong about one of the most fundamental characteristics of that ecosystem. If you're already feeling more than aggressive enough toward the liars and the thieves in crypto, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Ada Eclipse is here. Frazek is here. Eric Williams is here. J. Marie is here. Bindocam is here. Pucky Hawk is here. AI enthusiast. Let's go. Let's go. Mission Zambi is here. Good morning. Hola, Rulo. Thank you for joining. Tony Gam is here. No nonsense. Let's go. Afro in the Wind is here. Let's go. Gabe Carr Harris is here. Enter Night. I like that. Enter Night. Sounds like the robbery force to me. It certainly is. Man, it's the extended robbery force, which tells you exactly which ecosystem it is. Cardano for number one. Absolutely. For heaven's sake, on us is here. Marco Cardano is here. Hello. Thank you for joining. Josh Mick is here. Thank you for joining. So this is for real. I think it's gotten too out of hand. Like the amount of fuckery in crypto has gotten so out of hand. It's going to taint all of us. It's going to be a black mark against all of us because it got so out of hand over the last couple of years. It's I think people will call us aggressive and tribalistic and negative, but I think we've got to call, you know, criminals, you know, and like some people will turn out to just be fraudsters and some people will turn out to be just repeating lies that they don't know are lies. Some people will be willfully misrepresenting things. Some people will be accidentally misrepresenting things, but I think we've got to start calling out all of the bullshit, all of the fuckery. You know, it's like, it's okay. If somebody has something wrong, that's totally fine. If somebody accidentally says something that's not true, that's just part of human nature. This is going to happen. But there's this pattern of manipulation of facts in crypto that's gotten so out of hand. People don't even know. People don't even understand reality. People don't even understand what's actually happening when they move their assets around on a blockchain. That's the exact opposite of what the blockchain is supposed to do. The blockchain is supposed to promote transparency. It's supposed to be this, you know, novel way of moving assets around where you can see exactly what's going on and you don't get manipulated. You don't have a central bank manipulating the asset. And yet we're humans. So humans have now had, you know, 15 years, over 15 years to figure out very nuanced and complex ways to build the manipulation back into the system. And I like to think in Cardano, we've done a much better job than the vast majority of the rest of the crypto space in keeping the fuckery out. But we've also been too polite. In Cardano, we've been a little bit too polite. And we need to start getting a lot more aggressive about the fuckery that's going on in the rest of crypto, because we're taking black eyes over this, whether we want to or not. Like, you've all noticed it. You all feel it. It was cool to talk about crypto 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It was great. You talked to somebody about crypto and you saw hope in their eyes. Now you mention crypto to somebody and they look at you like you're a scammer. And it sucks for us in crypto, in Cardano, because we're not scammers. In Cardano, we've tried really hard to keep all that out of our ecosystem But some other ecosystems, it's goddamn bedrock for them. It's a part of the foundation of their ecosystems. It's the reason people are there. The fraud is why they're there. It's the rationale. It's the raison d'etre to be in that ecosystem. I think we've got to stop being so polite about it, right? And you got to be kind of careful though, because people will sue you. If you accuse them of being a criminal or a fraudster, they will sue you. So you got to go about this kind of carefully, right? You gotta just ask questions like, hey, is MEV fraud? If you ask the question, is MEV fraud? It's a very different legal situation than you saying, I think you are a fraudster. If you say, I think you are a fraudster to someone, they sue you. If you say, is this fraud? What happens is you bring the issue out in the light of day and people start trying to defend themselves. They start trying to explain why it's not fraud. So it's a much easier path to go to when you see this stuff to ask questions like, hey, is MEV fraud? Is a sandwich attack just fraud? Is that what that is? You know, when you see somebody lying or accidentally repeating a lie, I'm trying to be very nice. See, even I'm being too nice describing this, you know. But I think the lying about ecosystems is so widespread. It's so widespread. They've brainwashed their own partisans into believing the lies. Like, I thought for a long time they were all just sort of in on it, you know, and they all were just kind of like, you know, willfully accepting the lies. And to some extent, I think that's still true. But it's gone on for so long, and the honest actors in crypto have been so nice about it. Like, don't be tribalistic. Hey, don't talk shit about other ecosystems. Don't be tribalistic. We've been so nice about it that now the people who live in those ecosystems are just believing all of the goddamn lies. We got to stop being so nice, right? It's like they already hate us. They already fucking hate us in Cardano. Why? Because we're the honest actors. Because we're the only ones. We're the only cop in the department, not on the take. We're the only ones, you know, not taking the hundies off the drug dealer on the corner. We're the only ones not doing it. So the rest of the cops fucking hate us. That's what's going on here. And, you know, I mean, they hate it. It's not just that. That's the overarching issue. But it's not just the lack of straight up crime. It's really that we don't lie about our decentralization. We don't have to, you know, put the smoke screen and make it very hard and sort of, you know, smudge the ink on the paper to make it so you can't quite read that Nakamoto coefficient. We're just fucking honest about it. We're that honest cop that's not on the take, and all the rest of the fucking cops hate us. That's what we are. We've got to start talking about it though. We've got to start calling people out, because crypto is just like, we're taking black eyes for the misdeeds of some of our peers here. And I think we've got to start pointing out that it's not us. It's not us. That's what we got to start talking about. So what am I talking about? So first, let's do some positive stuff. Let's do some positive stuff first. So once again, we have Stake with Pride to thank for this, pointing this out. Like I always say, nothing can pass by the gaze of Stake with Pride. Stake with Pride notices everything. And this is a pretty big thing, actually, a pretty big positive thing. I decided we'd hit something positive before we go directly to the thumbnail topic. So this is a pretty big deal. Medical records on midnight running on Google Cloud. NexiFuse Health is working with a children's hospital in California and 3 million patients in Turkey. 3 million patients in Turkey, right? We've seen announcements like this before that talk about big numbers, but man, has Charles not been talking about this use case for a long time? Medical records. This is perfect. Turkey is kind of an economic power in that region of the world. They've got a lot of people, and there's a lot of room for an ecosystem like Cardano to come in and do something awesome like this. 3 million patients in Turkey, will take it. There's some pretty good, there's a pretty good video. There's a pretty good video around. If you go into this thread, if you go into Stake with Pride's thread, you'll find a video of I assume this is one of the founders from NexiFuse, and he tells you all about what they're doing, talking about midnight. But just imagine big pharma paying millions of patients on midnight to query their data on midnight. Isn't this the leveling of the economic playing field we've always talked about? This is exactly what we've always talked about. Like, isn't it messed up that our medical records are sold to big pharma for their research and we're not compensated for it? It's our goddamn data and we're not compensated for it. And we don't even have a say in it most of the time. You know, maybe we're tricked into signing consent forms, whatever it is, they're going to hold that data somehow. And I've never seen a dime for it. Have you? This is a great use case for midnight. So some very positive news. I think these are the kinds of great partnerships that are in the works that we're not hearing about. Charles has kind of been hinting there's some big things coming. Maybe it's a bunch of big chunks of new users, basically like this, like 3 million patients in Turkey. If their medical records are on the blockchain, they're users of the blockchain. That's an adoption of the blockchain by 3 million people in the best way possible. They're getting the benefits of the blockchain without even knowing they're using it. Here's another one. This one comes to us from Don Beyer. So this is also some positive news. Knight beats Sui in daily volume, ranking in the top 10 most traded digital assets. Like Sui, you'll remember for the last 4 years, Sui has been this huge, according to some of their proponents, success story. Look at what Sui's doing, next generation, so fantastic. Sui is the cutting edge. We heard all these things from, all kinds of people. And later on, we found out that maybe they were on, they were on some kind of a board of advisors to Sui. But Knight launches, we don't have any of those kinds of high-powered, very wide-reaching influencers talking about Knight. And Knight is beating Sui in daily volume. This one comes to us from Daniil, and my sentiments towards this are exactly the same as Daniil's. Was this ever a secret? So this is a great post kind of running down a pretty important phenomenon that's taking place in Japan. So you are probably aware of the yen carry trade. We've talked about it multiple times on this channel. Now we're going to talk about the effects of those very low interest rates going away, and also the possible disposition of some large holdings of assets. So this is a pretty seismic shift, right? And this news hit, and people have different thresholds for black swans, but right after this news hit, the crypto markets, like the next hour, we're not in good shape. So you can assign the causality of that shift in the crypto markets to whatever you want. But as far timing wise, these things kind of lined up. So this post says, for 30 years, Japan exported the cheapest money in human history, near zero rates, infinite liquidity, trillions borrowed in yen, deployed into every asset class on earth. That era died this week. So that first part is definitely true. The numbers no one is discussing. So, and I haven't double checked these. I'm just taking them at face value, but everything I've read makes me think this is all very directionally true. Bank of Japan ETF holdings, $500 billion. Disposal time just announced, over 100 years. December 19 rate hike. So what is that? Friday. So December 19 would be Friday. So it would be sort of, we'd be getting this on the evening of the 18th in a lot of the Western Hemisphere, Western Hemisphere. So new rate, they're talking about it going from 0.5 to 0.75, the highest since 1995. Famously, we've talked on this channel about the famous time in the late 80s, early 90s, when the couple of blocks around the Imperial Palace in Japan was worth more than all of the state of California. Unheard of inflation in assets. We've gone through the entire story on how that happened, how they had the directed window and, the central sort of bank planners were pushing money into certain industries to make certain industries grow, right? We know how this story goes now because we've been also injecting money into the economy for the last 20 years, and we're starting to experience a lot of the same things. But Japan was sort of at the height of that in the early 1990s, I think. And the Nikkei hit a number that it didn't recover back to until 2025. I think it was this year. They finally got back to that number. It was either 2025 or last year, but it's taken all this time for them to get back to that same number in the Nikkei stock index. So Japan's US Treasury holdings, 1.189 trillion, the largest foreign holder. I think a lot of people would have pegged China as the largest foreign holder. This post is saying Japan is the largest foreign holder. 10-year yield, 1.96%, highest since 2007. 30 and 40-year yields, all-time records. The pattern no one wants to acknowledge. BOJ hiked in March 24, Bitcoin fell 23%. BOJ hiked July 24, Bitcoin fell 26%. BOJ hiked January 2025, Bitcoin fell 31%. And the same thing is happening on the 19th. You can argue with yourself largely whether or not this has been already priced in, what this is going to do to the markets. I don't know. None of us really know. But this is something that's happening in the macro world. It's sort of like, I feel like 2025 was the year that macro sort of became a thing again. Macro became a thing that people would actually care about. All of a sudden, it was like, whoa, we have tariffs. This is messing things up. We don't know what the Fed's doing. We don't know what the White House is doing. I think a lot of people have argued, the same point I've been discussing on this channel, that it seems like 2026 is going to have to be the year for liquidity. And we finally get an announcement of 40 billion in liquidity per month in balance sheet expansion from the Fed. We got the limits removed from overnight repo agreements, which can also push liquidity in the market like they did yesterday to the tune of 5 billion. And here we have Japan going in the opposite direction. Japan has been at super low interest rates for decades now. And unfortunately, now is the time when they're reversing some of those things. So this is a pretty big item to watch. I am with Daniil. This is not a secret. Everybody has been talking about this and the effect it has on the global markets for the last, forever. The whole time crypto has existed, people have talked about this, but now things are finally unwinding. So before we go to the subject of the thumbnail, let's see some comments. Okay. Dr. Doak is here. Severed Tom Cardiac is here. Mike M's here. Jose Cano's here. JP Morgan is trying to set up a synthetic Bitcoin product to keep money out of actual crypto. Yeah, I mean, I think the TradFi institutions are going to set up a whole bunch of synthetic anything they can. I mean, that is their game. Synthetic, shadow markets, basically. We all learned about this during the GFC, the sort of fantasy baseball based on fantasy baseball based on fantasy baseball of a stock market that was, the sort of exotic derivatization of mortgages that only amplified that crisis. J. Marie says the fuckery forest. Yes, it is that. Guinness Speaks is here. We got more attention now. The stupid cartoon things are coming for us. Yeah, for real. Our measured approach will appeal to organizations and governments. I agree with that. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Guinness Speaks. Mission Zambia says, so true. Trying to talk to people about crypto just makes their eyes glaze over. You can tell when they put you in the category of scammers. It sucks. We got to put an end to it. It sucks. Let's go. Otis Fricho, let's go. Yep, this is number 760. The honest cop needs to watch his back. Unfortunately true. That's why they hate us. Government fuckery is real, really has people ticked off here in the US. I know that. True, Mike M. Aussies aren't thrilled with their government at the moment either. Also true. This rant would have been so much more impactful on a Visor live stream. You know what? I don't even know what the hell Visor is. I don't even know what Visor is. I don't know what it is. Fuckery cops, we need those. Yeah, where are they at? They don't exist in crypto. In crypto, we're all just like, don't be tribalistic. Hey, don't say bad things about other people. When the real ones are actually doing things, everyone else is going to be caught with their pants down. Yeah, I think that's happening. I think I posted, we'll get back to the post, but we'll get to the post, but I basically posted, I think this is the other foot falling. This is the era of the other foot falling on all the fuckery. It's like it's all unwinding now. Neo Chad, thank you for making it. Midnight is pure. So far it is. It's brand new. I mean, I'm sure things will happen in midnight too, but so far it is pure. Nothing bad has happened in midnight yet. I mean, I'm sure somebody would make some argument that something bad has happened, but nothing significant. Brown bearded hermit is here. Thank you for joining. Big mouth Rob, what goes down must go facts. Yep. Yep. Let's fucking go, Cardano. Yeah, J Coco, I agree. I'm just hoping the midnight will make it where I don't have to fill out redundant forms every time I see a position. That would be huge utility. That, I mean, solves a massive pain point for all of us. I agree with that. Japan is investing 400 to 500 billion in AI here in US over the next few years. Yeah, I heard the results of those negotiations, and I'm thankful to Japan for always being willing to cut a deal with us. Hopefully the US holds up its end of the bargain and doesn't try to renegotiate in a couple of years like we tend to do. Yeah, macro, but somehow only in the negative direction. Any gains we got quickly evaporated for whatever reason. Yep. My name is James and I'm addicted to Cardano. That sounds good. Visor equals the space. Oh, you're talking about that visor. Oh God. Okay. I didn't understand. I thought it was like some social media platform. Yeah, I didn't understand. Yep, I agree with that. Japan is very much our friend. I'm very thankful to the way Japan deals with the US. Very thankful for them. Okay, let's move on. I think this is a big deal, but I'm with Daniil. Not a secret. We've all known about this. The only surprise, not even surprise, but it's just the fact that it's finally happening is a change, but it definitely has not been a secret all these years what was going on. Okay. Let's talk about this first. Let's talk about decentralization for a second. So we saw yesterday, we talked about the discussion that was going back and forth where this, influencer, I'll call him an influencer, this influencer was trying to say that Solana was more decentralized than Bitcoin. And everybody objected, rightfully so. And there was mention of Solana having a Nakamoto coefficient of 21, right? Which is hilarious because in Cardano, we would scoff at a Nakamoto coefficient of 21. That to us would be centralized. But even the misinformation about Solana having a Nakamoto coefficient of 21 was a vast exaggeration of their decentralization. After much discussion, this poster decided, in reality, Sol's Nakamoto coefficient is 11. Apparently, he was counting just like straight, he was just counting like how many stake pools do I have to get to? He wasn't paying attention to the percentage that the stake pools held, like how many stake pools make up, probably, the 30%, the 33% figure or whatever the MAV is for Solana. It's apparently not as high as Cardano. We already knew that BFT was, much lower than the 50% for Cardano, 51%. So anyways, he came back and admitted, okay, it's not actually 21, it's actually 11. And then there was discussion about whether or not it was actually 11. People were talking about, the fact that a crazy percentage of them all use the same, cloud providers, whatever. We'll give them the number of validators, but it's a very, very centralized ecosystem, no matter how you count it. If it's 11 or anything under 11, it's very centralized. We already knew that centralization was a problem for this ecosystem because we got the news that they went from 2,500 validators down to like 800. I hear some people saying 500 now, which is like a joke to us. So when I think about this, I mean, these numbers they're all coming up with like 11 validators can, reorg your chain, if that's what we're saying by Nakamoto coefficient here. If 11 validators if 11 is your Nakamoto coefficient, I think this kind of story is kind of accurate. This is the way I think about this. It's as if, obviously this didn't really happen, but it's as if someone came up and asked me how long it would take to recreate the decentralization of this ecosystem, a top 10 blockchain. I would just open a Google sheet and ask them what other 9 people they wanted to share it with. To me, it's just a ledger being shared by 11 people if your Nakamoto coefficient is 11. And it's all kind of relative, There are some smaller blockchains that have out of this world Nakamoto coefficients, even higher than Cardano's, I understand, but Cardano's is pretty high. More on that in a second. The funny part, though, is the misinformation is so high. This person who's very, very active, thought his chosen ecosystem's Nakamoto coefficient was almost double what it actually is. And a lot of people would be like, oh yeah, but of course, Ethereum and Bitcoin, they must be the most decentralized. Like literally, if you talk to people in crypto, they would probably think Ethereum and Bitcoin are the most decentralized. But if you did the same experiment, like how many people would we have to share the spreadsheet with? If you're talking to one other person, you're kind of already done. If you've got 2 people sitting there and they both have access to the spreadsheet, you're arguably already hitting the same decentralization of Ethereum or Bitcoin. And you can get a lot of arguments on this. People argue, oh, but the individual miners who are part of the 2 or 3 mining pools that control 50% of the hash rate, they could move to a different mining pool. So they should count individually. So actually the Nakamoto coefficient of Bitcoin isn't that bad. But you can make all the same arguments about delegators. Delegators can move stake pools in Cardano on pretty short notice too. It's not that difficult. So we've got this very low, very, very low Nakamoto coefficient for both of these ecosystems too. Ethereum, people argue, oh, Lido shouldn't count. Lido is the liquid staking derivatives platform that everybody uses because they didn't have native liquid staking like we do in Cardano. It was kind of their crutch they leaned on. But Lido is a single point of failure. Lido is a single point of failure. So they try not to count Lido, just like the Bitcoin people try not to count the mining pools. They're like, oh, the mining pools shouldn't count for our Nakamoto coefficient. That shouldn't be the number we use. Just like the Ethereum people are like, oh, Lido shouldn't count as 1. But in fact, if you think about a Nakamoto coefficient, pretty much what we're saying is how many different entities need to be involved to do bad things to the chain. And here, if you just ask Google AI, what is the Nakamoto coefficient of Ethereum? It comes with a number of like 5. And if you, depending on what AI you ask, you might get numbers, that are as low as 2 or 3 or 5, but they're all way too low. They're all actually pretty centralized. Same thing with Bitcoin. If you ask Google AI, what's the answer for Bitcoin? Recent estimates suggest it's very low. For example, 2 or 3 in early 2025. So Bitcoin, we're talking 2 or 3. Ethereum, we're talking 5. These are the Nakamoto coefficients. And the AI even lists them for Ethereum, Lido, Coinbase, Binance, Ether.fi, Kiln. They even list them. So if you look at Cardano, what is the answer for Cardano? What's the Nakamoto coefficient? Well, if you go to pretty much any of our sort of stake pool explorer platforms, here we're on cexplorer.io. If you go to any of them, this is something we look at all the time because we actually care about decentralization. And you can just sort this whole page by the share, the percentage share that each of these groups have. You guys know most of these names, probably Avengers. This has long been labeled as Coinbase. We got Binance in there. We've got eToro in there. But if you just break out a calculator and count these up yourself, we're pretty transparent in Cardano, so it's pretty easy to do. You can just count these up. Earlier today when I did it, I came to a number of 43. And this aggregates the groups. See, Bloompool counts as 6. Crypto Capital Venture counts as 5. All these different groups are counted as NuFi counts as 18. One PCT counts as 30. So it's aggregating them. It's not like we're breaking up these groups, but 43 is a far cry from 5 or 2 or 11. And again, there's smaller blockchains not in the top 10 that have even higher numbers, but we're talking about a 4x difference, almost a 4x difference in decentralization. And the misinformation is so high, misinformation is so crazy that one of the most vocal characters around that ecosystem thought the decentralization was damn near double what it actually is. And if people hadn't called him out on it, if people hadn't called him out, I mean, granted, I think people have called him out on it a million times. This time he was actually convinced. But if people had never called him out on it, this guy might have gone his whole life thinking the Nakamoto coefficient of Solana is double what it actually is. But you might argue, okay, so they're not decentralized. At least they're providing the service to the people using their blockchain that they say they are. That's where we get to the worst part of what surfaced today, and that's this. So this lawsuit popped up. Apparently, this was posted yesterday. I didn't see it till this morning, but this is pretty interesting. This post says Pump.Fun and Solana lawsuit update. I didn't even know there was a lawsuit. Apparently, there was a lawsuit. And, Pump.Fun was one of the big success stories of the last cycle. If you say the word meme coin and you ask people to associate a platform with it, they're going to say Solana. And you ask them why, and they're going to say Pump.Fun. But this lawsuit says everything was not quite fun. So here's the claim. The claim is the plaintiffs allege that the defendants coordinated a scheme referred to as the Pump Enterprise to profit from cryptocurrency token launches by secretly granting insiders priority access to buy newly issued tokens while misleading ordinary users into believing those launches were fair. So these are just allegations. This is a lawsuit. Anybody can file a lawsuit, and they can file a lawsuit with completely untrue allegations or very true allegations and everything in between. So these are just allegations. I'm not representing them as truth. These are just what the plaintiffs in this lawsuit are alleging. So you might be saying to yourself, oh, well, that's just Pump.Fun. That's not Solana. It's just one project, and it's, a permissionless ecosystem. So maybe Solana had nothing to do with it. But what's actually happening here, this isn't the initial filing in the lawsuit. This was just the result of the plaintiffs asking the court to let them amend their complaint. The complaint is what they initially file, right? That's what initiates a lawsuit. They file the complaint. They, serve the defendant with the complaint, and that initiates the lawsuit. And then they're coming back. So they're saying, hey, we've got something new. We want to amend our complaint to include something new. And this is the court saying, granting them leave to amend their complaint, saying they're going to allow this new information. Here's the new information. A confidential informant, according to what the plaintiffs are saying and what the court is citing, a confidential informant provided them, the plaintiffs, with nearly 5,000 internal chat logs involving Pump.Fun personnel, Solana Labs engineers, and Jito Labs executives and other third parties. So it's not just Pump.Fun. And if we go to the first page of the lawsuit, you can always see the parties on the first page of a lawsuit. We see it's Baton Corporation doing business as Pump.Fun, a bunch of parties, a bunch of individuals, Solana Labs Inc., Solana Foundation, Anatoly, and some other individuals. So it's not just Pump.Fun. Solana Labs, Solana Foundation, and Anatoly are cited here as defendants. And, plaintiff's attorneys, it's not unknown for plaintiff attorneys just to name every possible defendant and every possible, allegation, just hoping something sticks against the wall, especially in like a class action lawsuit. But, here they're saying they actually have some chat logs involving Pump.Fun personnel, Solana Labs engineers, and some executives at Gito Labs. So you remember, I made a little note about it down here. You remember what was one of the most notable things in the evidence that was put forth around Binance that CZ got on all the trouble for. It was the internal chat logs. It was the internal team and their chat logs that was like death for Binance and CZ. So if we look at the actual allegations, though, what are they actually alleging? We saw, I mean, this is their claim. This is like sort of, if you want to think about their claim in sort of like, layman's terms, it's this, that the defendants coordinated a scheme to profit from cryptocurrency token launches by secretly granting insiders priority access to buy newly issued tokens while misleading ordinary users into believing those launches were fair. If you look at their actual legal allegations, are these. So they are asserting 4 claims against the defendants. Let's see, where are they at? Let's see first. Where's the first claim? They're alleging the sale and solicitation of unregistered securities. They're bringing claims under the RICO Act, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. I mean, originally most of us associated the RICO Act with like organized crime, but now we know that it's applied to many different contexts. Okay. Third, they assert claims under the New York General Business Law for deceptive acts and false advertising. Fourth, they assert a claim for unjust enrichment. So we have this RICO Act claim. We've got this alleged sale and solicitation of unregistered securities claim. And then we've got this deceptive acts and false advertising claim. We've also got this unjust enrichment claim. The one that I think is the most interesting is, like I said, plaintiffs, it's not unknown for plaintiffs' attorneys to just throw everything against the wall, see what sticks. But this one is kind of interesting to me. The claim under New York law for deceptive acts and false advertising, because a lot of the claims kind of boil down to what the court points out here. Plaintiffs allege that defendants coordinated a scheme to profit from cryptocurrency token launches by secretly granting insiders priority access to buy the tokens while misleading ordinary users into believing those launches were fair. And so if you get into the mechanics of what they're alleging here, part of it is it seems like they're kind of talking about MEV, and then part of it is maybe they're talking about something else. But the interesting thing here is this is like the archetype of a lot of the wrongdoing in crypto. And I don't know, to be fair, I'm just talking about their allegations. Who knows what actually happened with Pump.Fun? Who knows what the chat logs will actually show? Maybe the chat logs vindicate Pump.Fun and Solana. Maybe they don't. We don't know what the chat logs are going to show. We don't even know if it's going to get to that point. Down here below, I pointed out, we don't know what's in the chat logs. It could be no big deal, or maybe the defendants are scrambling to settle right now. We don't know. Some people were labeling this as the end for Solana. This is going to be so bad for crypto. We don't know, because we don't know what's in the chat logs right now. But what is interesting is what's being alleged kind of fits the overall scheme to steal from users in crypto. So the overall scheme is you create something kind of complicated, some kind of complicated platform, and you let people think they might make money. And then you get their money on that platform, and then you figure out some way to fuck them. That's the overall scheme that's used every single time in crypto. The fuckery is so nuanced that, at least 80% of the people aren't going to realize the potential even for fuckery. And of the 20% who do, like 10% of them aren't even going to care. And the other 10% are just going to convince themselves they'll slide through and get lucky. I mean, that's like the general pattern in crypto. All of these all of the bad schemes, all of the wash trading of NFTs that's gone on, all of the sort of, manipulation of, various types of platforms that's gone on. It's all just like these very complex, nuanced ways to convince people they might make money if they lock their funds in this certain platform. And then actually there are like all these nuanced ways in which they get fucked, you know. Here these allegations are, largely around insiders riding on the backs of all the regular users, making all the money, and then the regular users losing out. But these are the claims here. So I thought this was interesting. People are going to have a lot to say about this law firm. This is plaintiffs' law firms. Are often the people who they go after are often painted in a bad light. But they're pretty much just laying out there what the accusations and allegations are. So, like I said, we don't know. Did Pump.Fun do anything wrong? Did Solana Labs do anything wrong here? We don't know. Anybody can file a lawsuit. It could be completely frivolous. We have no idea. But I think this general pattern that's being alleged here is true in a lot of different places in crypto. And unfortunately, we all take a black eye every time something like this happens. Like, can you imagine if this lawsuit had been filed during the last administration? They would have had like the FBI knocking on their door the very next day. Like the Pump.Fun founders would have had, they would have had to worry about, much greater attention from those kinds of agencies if this has been the last administration. This, of course, very crypto friendly administration, so different outcome. But I think in crypto, we've got to be a little bit more vocal about all of the kinds of fuckery that are going on in crypto. Because there's a bunch of dudes just like this one. They're just like sitting at some desk somewhere and they're like, yeah, Mev is fine. I can do a sandwich attack on this person. I can, put my transaction before their transaction, drive the price way up, let them buy at this super elevated price, and then I sell on the back end. So they end up getting screwed. That's accepted in crypto. And it's almost like we've got to culturally, at some point, the courts are going to come around and they're either going to say that's fraud or that's not fraud. But in the meantime, it's sort of this cultural thing. Either in crypto, we all say, oh, that's just MEV, that's not fraud. Or a lot of us ask the question every time it comes up, is MEV fraud? Why do you think MEV is not fraud? Maybe that's the best way to put it. Why do you think MEV is not fraud? The guy who made that transaction, he's not expecting to get screwed by transaction sequencing like this. Explain to me how it's not fraud. This is what doesn't happen in crypto because we've just sort of accepted that minor extractable value is a part of the game. But if it's a part of the game, maybe our entire space gets painted as scammers. And I don't think we need to carry that burden as Cardano because we don't have the same extent of those things in Cardano. People pointed out today, it'd be great if we could say that MEV doesn't exist in Cardano, but batchers are capable of MEV. We've talked about this many times on the channel. The batchers of our DeFi platforms in Cardano, at least when they all first launched, I keep pointing out that I haven't kept up with the latest MEV mitigation, mechanisms. So I don't know. But when they all first launched, I heard firsthand how it was obviously possible from people who would know that it was obviously possible to execute on MEV in Cardano. If you were a batcher, people are pointing out it's also possible with nested transactions. So it is possible in Cardano. It's harder though. It's harder because we don't have a global mempool. So there's many things to Cardano's architecture that make it much better on that account. Mike M says Solana is dead. I saw that post. Bitcoin is dead too. Laughing. Okay. The bot's really playing the night chart. It really looks overvalued right now. When does actual price discovery occur? No idea. No idea. I mean, to me, it's these are all just kind of like words, price discovery. It's they're markets. It's like the only things that are sure about the market is that if the market is operating, it's going to tell you how much those night tokens are worth at any one time. And there are so many different unexpected events that could affect the price on any given day. So when does actual price discovery occur? I don't know. Mike M says, I'm replacing shower head, plumbing, and wall in bathroom all day. No running water. Really sucks. That does suck. Solana and Pump.Fun really hit that lawsuit. Yeah, I mean, like am I the only one who am I and Mike M the only ones who hadn't heard about this lawsuit? Had anybody else heard about this lawsuit? Because it's a pretty big lawsuit, right? It's like it's the subject matter that's being tackled in the lawsuit is pretty important. Like the bigger question you could argue is, to what extent can the insiders profit, and in what ways can they profit in a launch pad? I mean, there's going to be like sort of factual questions that have to be sorted out, but it's not really established law. I mean, I'm sure there's case law. You could dig up case law on this, but it's to my, I haven't read a ton of case law that says, lays out the contours of how, when, and to what extent can insiders profit from a token in a launchpad environment like Pump.Fun. So there's some pretty serious legal questions there. You'd think that a lot of people would be like, hey, this is a really important lawsuit. We should pay attention to this. Maybe it'll get disposed of. And like I pointed out in the comments, maybe it gets settled. Maybe there's some horrible stuff in those chat logs, and the defendants will immediately scramble to settle this thing. Of course, that's what you're hoping if you're the plaintiff's attorney, especially if it's a class action, because the fees make up a huge amount of the settlement. You're hoping it gets settled and you don't have to do any more work and you just sort of get paid. That's what you're hoping for. But if one day a case like that will actually create some precedent, and it's kind of hard to imagine a lot of judges looking at MEV and being like, this is okay. I'm totally good with this. A lot of judges are going to, I don't know. And my suspicion is a lot of judges are going to get a case like that, find out what MEV is for the first time in their lives, like hear that acronym and actually understand what it is, and say like, this is fraud. This is obviously fraud. So we'll see. But we did not hear about this. If this went down in the Cardano ecosystem, everybody would be talking about it very loudly. I think this is a good point from Mike M. I never heard about this. Insider traders suck in TradFi, and they also suck in crypto. Bastards, if true. Yeah, I mean, it does seem what's being alleged. We don't know what happened, but what's being alleged is kind of it's in a way it's sort of worse. It's different and also bad, like insider trading, right? It's like they're not trading on inside information. It would be like I'm not trying to say what's being alleged in the lawsuit or what actually happened, but in my mind, this is like kind of like undisclosed trading by insiders, and they're front running the market, right? It's like this is why disclosures about insider dispositions of securities are required in periodic filings. Those filings go in Edgar, Qs, Ks, 8Ks, all those filings, they all have the trades. They disclose the trades of the insiders so that the markets know what the hell's going on. I mean, this kind of stuff is part of the reason why, so many people at the SEC wanted crypto just to be subject to normal SEC regulations, because they saw the potential for this kind of stuff to happen and screw the little guy. JHC Solana. What is? Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Yep, agreed. It takes courage to come forward. Welcome to the ADA Junkie Society. Made it just. Cardano, thanks for joining. Hilldog, thanks for joining. Puppers liked Disclosure Day trailer. I keep screaming at the top of my lungs to my Christian buddies that there's connection with all this. Okay. Disclosure. Oh, the Spielberg movie Disclosure Day. I thought you were talking about funny coincidence because we were talking about SEC disclosures, but Disclosure Day trailer. Very interesting. Very interesting. I will certainly be watching that as soon as it comes out in June. I think it was June. Crunchy Cat, hey OS, nice to catch you live, but I've got like 8 videos to catch up on first. Feel free to watch them in any order. They're all meant to be sort of standalone things, so you can watch them in whatever order you like. 6 months ago, ADA was at 24 cents after a Trump meme coin money grab. 24 was bottom with long-term stakers holders. Now 34 is bottom. New Cardano stakers. Okay. Yeah, fuckery has been going on in crypto for sure. Puppers, again, I said stop fat pawing the buy button on night tokens. Ivan on Tech, not kind to Cardano today, suggested Midnight was a new coin, like a cash grab when Cardano being abandoned, like Richard Hart move. Was curious. So I haven't watched Ivan on Tech in a long time. I remember back in the day when Ivan on Tech was a younger Ivan on Tech, and he used to I think he used to like do push-ups. He used to do push-ups or encourage his audience to do push-ups while they're listening to the videos. It was pretty entertaining, but I'm not sure if Ivan on Tech. I know, and I know you watch him like everybody else does just for the entertainment purposes, but you know, I, I'm not sure if he would like be able to lay out a good argument why he thinks Night is a cash grab, or even if he like really understands that Night is like the privacy layer for Cardano. If Night was just like a random partner chain and there was no additional functionality, if it was just like, hey, here's Midnight, it's a partner chain, it's doesn't really do anything new, buy it, then I would agree with him. But where privacy is one of the biggest trends in crypto right now, Cardano doesn't have a privacy layer like virtually every other ecosystem except Zcash. I think it makes sense. It's like the logical move, and probably every ecosystem is going to do it. I don't think Ivan on Tech would be saying that if Ethereum was like, hey, here's our new L2 Midnight. I don't know if he'd be saying the same thing. But then again, I haven't watched a single Ivan on Tech video in probably, I don't even think I watched one last cycle, let alone this cycle. Cardano has the largest stake pool system and is the bedrock foundation. Yeah, I mean, the beautiful part about Cardano has always been Ouroboros. The way it works is amazing. Let's hope Ada and Night go ahead and like 1000x. That'd be fantastic. I think that is utterly impossible this cycle, let alone this Christmas. But if it would just give us any number of X's, I'd be good with any number of X's. You know, basically over the next 12 months, any number of X's would make me happy. Okay, maybe not any number, you know. I definitely like you know, something I'd like, you know, we need to get above a certain number. I'll just put it that way. Staking is the key to long-term stability. Yeah, I think that's true. Staking has been super stable for Cardano. It's created this group of users of the blockchain who are, you know, earning staking rewards every 5 days. The downside is we like largely refuse to participate in DeFi, but I would say we're just kind of going our own path, and maybe this is a better way to go than the chains where staking sucks and they all participate in DeFi because staking is not self-custodied. So they might as well get as big a yield as they can because they can't have self-custodied staking. You know, that's my take on it. Staking for the win. Yep. Brown Bearded Hermit says, nope, didn't hear about it either. Yeah, I think it's true. I think that was a good point that Solana kind of kept that under wraps. They were not advertising that. Solana is a centralized VC meme coin casino chain, no real utility. Miss me with that. Yeah. I mean, when you have to argue about whether or not your Nakamoto coefficient is 11 or 3, which is a conversation that was going on in that thread. There was a question whether the Nakamoto coefficient was 3 or 11. Then you shouldn't be walking around talking about decentralization. And those motherfuckers talk about decentralization all the time. In fact, that whole thing started because he said that Solana was more decentralized than Bitcoin, and it pissed people off. But you shouldn't be talking about fucking decentralization when your Nakamoto coefficient is somewhere between 3 and 11. People being vocal will achieve as much as the average petition, nothing. Perhaps the people will feel a little better about themselves, but that is about all. I mean, possibly, but I think it's a difference between Cardano distinguishing itself as a blockchain where that stuff is not welcome versus the other blockchains where it is, right? If everybody's like, they don't go for that shit over in Cardano, then it's going to be a very different outward perception than if we just say nothing. Like literally, it could be a thing where either everybody in Cardano decides like, yeah, MEV is a part of crypto or MEV is fraud, right? It's like we can make that choice right now because MEV is not a big part of our ecosystem. And they're two very different roads, right? It's sort of like choosing democracy or not, right? It's like, you can say like it doesn't make a difference if you point out that some government is totalitarian, but it actually, they're two different destinies you're choosing for yourself. MEV is fraud versus MEV is normal are two different worldviews. And a lot of things, I hear what you're saying. If we just go around bitching at everybody, it doesn't make a difference. But it's more about what we accept in our own ecosystem. I think the reason why we have to call it out is to make it clear that we're not going to accept that in our ecosystem. Like MEV is fraud versus MEV is normal are two completely different worldviews, right? And who knows? You're right. If people just go around bitching about it, it doesn't make a difference. But if everybody in Cardano knows that we're in the MEV is fraud camp, that's a very different world. Otis Frichov did not know about that lawsuit. I don't think very many people did at all. Bucky Hawk says, I heard about the lawsuit a couple months ago and bought some pump. Okay. This could go either way, but I'm betting they will win. Yeah, I mean, it's big. So deep pockets like Solana and Pump.Fund, they're, likely to get sued on, likely to have any number of lawsuits going on at any given time. There's a lot of frivolous litigation in the US, but this one is interesting because it's putting a spotlight on something that may or may not be going on with Pump.Fund, but something that's certainly going on throughout crypto. That's insiders making a ton of money and on the backs of the normal people, and the normal people not really knowing about it, right? It's like the allegation is this was billed as a fair launch. It wasn't a fair launch. You're not allowed to do that in commerce in the US. They cited that as a violation of New York state law. It's you're not allowed to make a material misrepresentation like that in most jurisdictions and induce someone to give you their money. That's something that we don't allow in most US jurisdictions. So they might still win though. I mean, US litigation like this, it's not known as a place where the big guy never wrongly wins, right? And who knows, maybe they're totally innocent and they'll rightly win in this case, but we'll see about that. I think Knight is good value. People are starting to learn why privacy matters. Government needs to butt out of our affairs. Yep. I think that's all true. Privacy matters. We're going to see staking grow larger and larger over time, and people will hold long term, and Cardano will be resistant to rug pulls. That'd be nice. Perhaps kudos to them for keeping a lid on it from the public. Just think how public and venomous such a suit would be on Cardano X. Yeah, I mean, there are projects on Cardano this could have applied to, and it would be crazy on Cardano X, but that's part of the reason why we don't have as much of that. Like, I feel like, you could either be an ecosystem where you don't look at things like that. You're just like, no, we're great. Don't pay attention to that. Sweep that under the rug. Or you can be like us, hyper self-critical, too self-critical. You could argue that that Cardano eats its own in that way. We're too self-critical. I think it's good that we put so much attention on those types of issues. How we do it is obviously not good. There's some people are definitely unpleasant about it when it comes up. I think putting the spotlight on those things is good. Having the discussion is good. Do people do it in the wrong way all the time? all the time in Cardano for sure. And that's a lot of crypto actually. Mike M, very excited for midnight in Cardano. Okay. Streetwise says, I think privacy is tremendous value, and especially right now, why can't IO run a Super Bowl ad saying we're this research-based privacy chain that's never been hacked? It's kind of like, I mean, VeChain was in the octagon in the UFC for a long time. You tell me if VeChain, rocketed into the top 10 because of it. Yep. Yep. We have a marketing problem. I mean, is it really marketing? Like, you can call it marketing. It depends on labels, right? Who's the head of the Bitcoin marketing team? You could say that's Michael Saylor, or you could say the only marketing Bitcoin ever did was the white paper. The most famous marketing document in all of crypto is the Satoshi white paper. And Satoshi just wrote a white paper and walked away. I think it's sort of I think there is a problem with sort of understanding of Cardano, like understanding what Cardano is. But part of it is, and maybe this is a marketing problem. People understand that Cardano has a current Nakamoto coefficient of like 43, depending on how you want to count it, like 43. And these other blockchains are like 11, 5, and 3. Solana, Ethereum, and Bitcoin are apparently 11, 5, and 3. Ask the average person in crypto which is more decentralized, and you're probably going to hear them say the exact opposite. That Bitcoin's the most decentralized, then Ethereum, then Solana, then Cardano, and they will say that fully believing that that's the truth. So that's what I think we have to be louder about. We have to be a little less polite about it. I think for a long time, whenever anybody'd say that Solana is more decentralized than Cardano, I would just post normally I would just post a link to the Edinburgh Decentralization Index. The EDI does not include Solana, so it's not as effective with Solana. But with Ethereum and Bitcoin, it is. They are included. Definitely Bitcoin. I believe Ethereum as well. And I would just post that, and of course they would come back with that was sponsored by IOG. That doesn't count. And then you just like go down the list, send them. There are tons of sources that show the Nakamoto coefficient for all these ecosystems. And, the only ones, there are some sort of misinformation sites that will try to say the Bitcoin, Nakamoto coefficient is in the thousands or something because they want to count every single mining rig as a different validator, but I was around in the days before Ethereum, and that is not how we counted the decentralization of Bitcoin. It was a thing. Like when one of the mining pools would start having too many rigs pointed at it, there'd be these big efforts on Reddit, on the crypto and Bitcoin Reddits. And it was like, okay, we need a bunch of the miners to stop pointing their rigs at this mining pool. They've got too much of a share of the hash rate. It was something that was discussed all the time. And nobody was ever like, oh, don't worry, our Nakamoto coefficient is every single rig. People were like, hey, this mining pool just got up to 39%, right? That's what people were worried about. So this trying to relabel the Nakamoto coefficient is just propaganda. This is just like new propaganda. It's the propaganda's favorite tool is redefining things. As we're all aware from the last 5 years of things like gender politics, like redefining things is one of the central features of propaganda. And that's what they're doing in this case, just trying to redefine this Nakamoto coefficient measurement, which it turns out is not very beneficial to some of the biggest ecosystems. Good morning, Mallow. Thank you for joining. Did the SEC mention midnight? You mean Paul Atkins? Did Paul Atkins mention midnight? Somebody can direct me to that if that's the case. Paul Atkins did talk about, he has been talking about privacy quite a bit and selective disclosure. And it's almost, those are almost like, those are like basically midnight talking points, which to me it just signifies how how much midnight is right over the target. Like midnight is right over the target on this privacy trend thing. It's like right now things are terrible in crypto, but if you wanted to be positioned perfectly for when things get better, I can't tell you what would be better than being so on target for privacy right now. Yep. Otis Fricio's sentiment is the same as mine. He didn't. I've never heard him mention midnight, but man, his talking points are sort of identical to the midnight talking points. Can this lawsuit proceed without clarity? You mean without the Clarity Act? So yeah, so this is just a civil lawsuit. Like the thing people forget is that you've got SEC enforcement actions, which is the SEC being kind of the plaintiff in a regulatory enforcement action. And then you've got just parties. Like if somebody screws you, if somebody commits fraud against you, or how did they phrase it in terms of the New York state law? They assert claims under the New York General Business Law, sections 349 and 350, for deceptive acts and false advertising. So a lot of states like New York have laws that address things like deceptive acts and false advertising, things that sound a lot like fraud. And if somebody induces you to give them your money through deceptive acts or false advertising, most states have a law that say that's not okay, and you can cite that as that can be a claim in a civil lawsuit. So that's what's going on here. So this is completely independent from the Clarity Act. Brown Bearded Hermit says Ivan only throws Cardano a bone rarely, so his misunderstanding continues, it seems. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say anything bad about Ivan on Tech because he did a good job hyping people up like years ago. He did a pretty good job hyping people up, back in those days, not in a bad way. Like I said, I haven't watched his channel in years. So I don't know what he's up to, but he did a good job hyping people up, and like hitting people with the good talking points about crypto. So I don't want to say anything bad about Ivan for sure. But it doesn't surprise me that he is not in the Cardano camp. That kind of doesn't surprise me. I heard stories of people earning thousands per month from reward staking. Oh yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I mean, there's kind of a rate of return for staking. So if you have enough, you can make a lot of money from staking for sure. Not many have heard about the lawsuit because Solana is the darling of crypto, so negative news gets buried. True. In the early days, the return on staking was like 5 to 6% with a big enough bag that is achievable. Yeah, it was great. Like during the ITN, it was like phenomenal. And then it's gone down. Just due to the normal architecture of Cardano, by design, it's gone down. Brownbeard, you're totally on point. A shame because he's usually pretty agnostic. Army on point observation. Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear that he's normally pretty agnostic as to blockchains. So that's good to hear. Just imagine earning whatever from staking for years. Then Cardano hits $10. All the stake coins are worth a ton. It's a win-win. That's like the dream. The Cardano dream for sure is that the price of Cardano goes up high enough that you're making, a good living off the staking. That would be the dream for sure. One that I think we've all held in our hearts for a long time. And Ulrich, hello. Thank you for joining. Glad you're here. Will Mofo Show is here. Hey, Will. Checking in live for midnight. Much love to y'all. Hear you in the AM. Sounds good. That's right. This is the night shift. For sure it is. If you want retail, you need to show them the utility. Bitcoin is gold. Nice elevator pitch. Yeah, I mean, this is like part of the problem. This is a good point. This is part of the problem with Cardano. It's not even a problem. It's just a fact of life. It's like the things that are beautiful about Cardano are kind of nuanced and complicated. Like we're in kind of a nerd ecosystem, guys. In that it's like it's not made for low IQers, right? It's like you can't if your IQ is below a certain threshold, you're not going to sit through one of Charles's AMAs and understand what the hell he's talking about. So the things that are attractive about Cardano are going to be attractive to people above a certain IQ threshold. And a lot of retail falls below that. That's the problem. They understand Bitcoin is digital gold. They're like, I've actually seen these conversations go down. Like, literally, I've heard somebody say, why do you buy Bitcoin? And the other guy'd be like, Bitcoin is digital gold, bitch. Like that. And that's like the extent of their understanding of Bitcoin and why they like it. But at a certain IQ level, that's what they need, you know. So I don't think Cardano is not crafted for that, right? Cardano is not crafted for that crowd. And you know, it's uh it's you know, maybe that makes it less of a mass market thing than some other ecosystems. I mean, it's kind of like Solana, right? It's like uh a lot of the people in sort of the mass market are never going to know what a Nakamoto coefficient is. They're never going to know what that is. And you're just like, yo man, you can buy, you know, uh a cartoon animal wearing a hat over here. And they're like, all right, let's do that. Nakamoto coefficient is not part of the thought process at all. And yeah, the Bitcoin is digital gold elevator pitch is a lot easier to consume. Um, oh yeah. Oh yeah. The Coinbase announcement. Coinbase is kind of claiming they're reinventing everything. I don't know. I was sort of feeling like maybe a big tokenization thing, tokenization of something pretty big or a partnership that's going to sort of pave the way for a big tokenization event, you know. I mean, you got to be thinking to yourself, if you're one of the big name brand TradFi institutions, and all of a sudden, it's clear everything's going to go forward in terms of regulatory clarity. You know, one of them has got to be thinking, okay, we're like a royal family who controls a medieval fiefdom. Coinbase is like this, you know, nouveau riche family that also controls a sizable area of land. We will marry one of our daughters to this Coinbase family. So, you know, they're like, how do we marry Coinbase? You know, like we should marry Coinbase. We're afraid these new digital guys are going to take too big a piece of a pie. We should get married to Coinbase. So it could be something like that. It could be some big partnership with some big TradFi institution that has crazy numbers of customers, or it could be a big tech company. It could be a big tech company that's crazy number of customers. I keep sort of waiting for that to happen now that regulatory clarity is obviously we're on the verge of regulatory clarity. I keep sort of waiting for some big marriage to happen between probably the first one would be like a Coinbase and somebody with a lot of customers. And then, you know, it's like everybody will kind of pair off, you know, Kraken will get with some people, you know, maybe Binance gets with some people, that kind of thing. So it could be something like that, or maybe it's something totally different. I hope it'd be cool if it was like, you know, something gigantic, like Google was going to make all of crypto, you know, except for Night, available across all of its platforms via Coinbase somehow. Obviously, that wouldn't include Night, which would be terrible, but you know, it could be something as big as that. I hope it's something gigantic like that. Okay, for me, watching Ivan shit on Midnight right at launch is a testament to how jealous they are. Was Ivan anti-Midnight? Oh yeah, Midnight was the one where he said it was. He said he thought it was just a cash grab. Yeah, I mean that's a thing in crypto. You'll see influencers in crypto be very negative about something if they don't have a bag of it. Um, so I would argue in Cardano, like, you know, a lot of us hold Bitcoin, but not a lot of us have, you know, as much of other ecosystems as we do of Cardano and Bitcoin. So we kind of, you know, we're not like the biggest cross chain guys, I think. We're a high assurance, high Nakamoto coefficient chain with good governance. What does that mean to anybody outside the space? I think we can improve that a lot. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Basically, it's the premise of decentralization. Like, the mainstream still doesn't understand the decentralization proposition, the value proposition of decentralization, right? This is like marketing 101 stuff. You have to have a value proposition to pitch to prospective customers. And one way that value proposition might become extremely evident is if the Clarity Act, ends up, if the market structure bill we end up getting, the Clarity Act we end up getting, if it gets into the nitty gritty of decentralization, it requires things like governance and a high Nakamoto coefficient. It wouldn't do that in those terms, but if it requires, a certain threshold of decentralization, including decentralization of governance, all of a sudden, Cardano, the value prop, is going to become very self-evident. Angry Crypto said SEC mentioned midnight. I don't know. I've never seen Angry Crypto's videos, so I don't know. Fiat mines come early. See you all next time. Otis Fricio, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Selective disclosure, if I recall correctly. Guess whose tagline that is? Yep, that is some midnight stuff. I take Ivan's word with a grain of salt. Okay. Ivan said he would give lifetime memberships to early supporters of his educational product. Did not follow through. Interesting. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's you'd think that'd be something you'd think that'd be the kind of thing that obviously I don't know anything about this, but that would be the kind of thing that should be easy to do. You should be able to do that at any point after the fact, right? You should just be able to like cook those up, like, here you go, here's your lifetime membership. Thank you, Mallow. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. New meta is it's digitized energy, which is a load of ball. Yeah, that they've been pushing that one really hard. Like that sort of theme has always been around. Like, hey, the Bitcoin miners can turn off their shit when you guys in Texas need energy. They're going to turn off their rigs, and they're going to turn the ASICs back on when you guys are all sleeping and you don't need the energy. And that way the energy doesn't get wasted. It just gets stored in, as digital dollars. But we all know what's going on. You know what I mean? It's like, are they, how many ASICs are getting turned off when the local grid needs the energy? Sure, if the energy gets more expensive, they'll be, they might be sensitive to cost, but the extent to which they're just sort of altruistically turning off and on their rigs, I call me glass half full, but I think that would have to be regulatorily mandated. I think they're going to be running those rigs as long as the energy is cheap enough. They're going to be running those rigs. Okay, brown bearded hermit. I have to let you know, I scoured the internet for Integra and Overmind today. I came up empty apart from one X post about Integra. Very hush hush. Ooh, yeah. I mean, hey, they released it on their public internet. I only have the same access to their internet that the rest of the world does. So that is, that is their doing. But yeah, so Integra was the forensic tracing one, right? And Overmind, we think, is the AI one. Very interesting. How do you maintain your mental? This has been going on and on for years. Can't escape the fiat mines. Man, escaping the fiat mines. I mean, the way the prices are going, sometimes escapes are short-lived. Let me put it that way. Sometimes escapes are short-lived, but how do you maintain your mental health? Are you saying how do you maintain your mental health with respect to the fiat mines or with respect to crypto, or both? Which one are you asking about? The tax the fiat mines take on your mental health, or the tax crypto takes on your mental health, or both? I don't understand what you're talking about. How did I get here? What are we doing? Yeah. This is a good question. Sometimes I find myself late at night wondering this question, wondering about these same questions. I'm ready to jump on a new dual sport and ride. Ooh, what kind of dual sport are we talking about? What are we talking about? I sold my CBX years ago. Oh yeah, what would you buy? What would you buy? What's the new one? Inline. Oh, 6 carbs. No thanks. No thanks. I do not need to be tuning 6 carbs. I'm good. I'm good not tuning 6 carbs. Unless they're really simple. If they're really simple carbs maybe, but nothing complicated. Probably lower fees. What was that with respect to? What are you talking about with lower fees? That's a good point from Bindocam. You remember SBF? Centralization. You remember Luna? Centralization. Yep. And I mean, with the case of SBF, it was also doing risky stuff with other people's money. I feel like that was a big part of the problem. It's like, and I mean, that's really a part of that is kind of like a disclosure problem and like no guardrails problem. Cause like, disclosure, if there was disclosure mandated, then he would have had to have told people what he was doing with their money, all this risky shit he was doing with their money. And then, I mean, some of that stuff, obviously that was so risky though, there should have been guardrails that just said you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that with anybody's money. But it was kind of like, hey, we're a bunch of polyamorous people were they in Bermuda, Bahamas? They were in the Bahamas, right? Bunch of polyamorous people in their, what did they call it? What did they call their little polyamory pod thing? They had a super fancy name for it, but we're a bunch of polyamorous nerds in the Bahamas doing super risky shit with all your money. But we're not going to tell you about it. Like guardrails or disclosure would have solved part of that. Damn, forgot you were on. I'm not working tomorrow. I was watching a new episode of Fallout. Banging, bro. Oh, I don't have, that's on like Prime, right? I don't have Prime, or I would watch that. I've definitely played the games. Some of them. One of them. Two of them, I guess. Two of them. Who do you think the Midnight Fortune 5 announcement is going to be? Is there going to be a Midnight Fortune 5 announcement? I sort of heard speculation about that, but is that confirmed? Is there definitely going to be a Midnight Fortune? No, I think, has Charles straight up said that? Has Charles straight up said there's going to be a Fortune 5 announcement? Maybe he has. Maybe there was kind of like halfway indications of things like that, but now it's all kind of blurry in my head whether or not that's a confirmed thing or just a thing we're kind of hoping for. Beat the sidewalls of that like button up, boys. Thank you, Jeff Byrne. I appreciate that. Charles has been posting X3 on Twitter lately. Are you saying X3? Charles posting X3 on YouTube. Are you saying 3 times a day, or are you saying literally X3? I know you're big on CNTs, but you ever use tap tools? I've cruised over there and looked at it. For sure. Maybe Kawasaki. I thought about a Yamaha Tenere 700. Okay, interesting. Yeah, 700 seems to be kind of a sweet spot lately. They're building a lot of really interesting bikes around 700. My team is making incredible progress on what I'm calling BOS, not Bitcoin OS, doing business as #Integra. AI meets human wisdom in action. Tamara Hassan. Ooh, Ginger Snaps. Snap says, my team is making incredible progress on what I'm calling BOS, doing business as Integra. So what could BOS be? God, I'm trying. So we know that's supposed to be the analytic tracing one, right? But then we've got AI meets human wisdom in action. So that kind of makes it sound like maybe Overmind is not the AI one. That's a little confusing, but okay. That's some mention of Integra though. Interesting. I'm just gonna call it Acura. Honda has some classics coming. Yeah, the retro bikes coming out of Japan have been interesting. None of them have quite. They've been interesting. I'll put it that way. They've been interesting. What's up with these new bikes with automatic clutches? Ooh, yeah, all the DCT stuff. Honda's making a bunch of stuff with DCT. I don't know how to feel about that. What's funny is I like electric bikes, but I don't know how to feel about automatic gas bikes. That part's kind of weird. He said Fortune 5, but maybe slang for 500. Okay, I do remember this. I remember thinking the same thing. I remember hearing him saying that and not understanding if he was talking about Fortune 5 or Fortune 500. I remember thinking that. Charles is pretty precise when it comes to stuff like that, though. So I'm going to hope for Fortune 5. I believe Integra is their concept to integrate AI into enterprise business operating system. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I thought we were told, weren't we told last night that Integra was, so maybe Overmind is the analytics tracing product and Integra is the AI product. Maybe we had it switched last night, or maybe I misunderstood whoever was telling us that. A lot of 750s and 5s. Yeah. I've heard the one I haven't ridden that I've heard good things about is the Husky 701 Supermoto. I've heard really good things, but people who've told me that also admitted they've wrecked like multiple of them. not due to any fault of the bike, but just because they're awesome. If my ADA stable coins go down, I'm gonna unload all my properties and cash in some food stamps to peg it back to $1. Yeah. God, hopefully none of the ADA stables like have like a real depeg event. That'd be very bad. Strike Finance is doing crazy volume. Kind of speaks to how degen retail is. I just stake and get that sweet ADA rewards. That's me too. That's me too. Other way. Overmind is the AI system. Integra is the integration of it. Okay. So Overmind is the AI system. Integra is how they integrate it into business. Okay. And I guess AI, I guess it also has some function toward analytic tracing. Is that what we're saying? That kind of makes sense. I had a 85 450 SC Nighthawk at the ranch in the profile picture. Oh, interesting. That would be, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's great. Okay, guys, I think we have covered all the news for the day. I'm serious though. I think we got to start making it clear that and this should really apply to all of crypto, but I've lost hope. I don't think we can go to the Solana guys and convince them that they should start viewing MEV as fraud, or the Ethereum guys. It's like the as soon as they change the name from minor extractable value to maximal extractable value, that's when we lost them. I give up hope on them ever understanding it. But so it really should be all of crypto just deciding that things like MEV are fraud. They're not acceptable. But my only hope now is Cardano. I think Cardano was the last bastion of, a true crypto ethos in some ways. We're not really the last one. I think there's others out there. There's probably a lot of people in some of the other ecosystems, maybe like Avalanche or Algorand or Polkadot, some ecosystems like that. I'm sure there's a lot of people like us, but in the top 10, we might be the last bastion of a true crypto ethos holding people, who believe in decentralization, who don't want things like MEV, who don't want launch pads where the goddamn insiders get to sell their coins right before everybody else buys. Like, not saying that's what happened in that lawsuit, but I think we've all suspected that could be happening in launch pads. I'm sure there are launch pads where it happens and it's disclosed, but I think we're all afraid it could happen and not be disclosed. I think we've got to make a decision. We've got to make some we've got to draw some lines in the sand culturally and just say some of these things aren't going to be accepted. But I hope everybody is having a good week. Okay, here's one more comment. You remember how Charles posted glowing videos about how Gemini can make these big old research reports? Plenty of goods for biz. How Gemini, are we talking about Google Gemini AI or Gemini, the centralized exchange? Jeff Byrne, thanks for joining. Hilldog, the Night Army. It's pretty good. I like it. Isn't that what Luna did? They had a bunch of coins download to make the stable peg go back to $1 when it depegged. Man, that was such a mess. I couldn't even try to recite everything that happened. Okay, Google Gemini for sure. Okay, that makes sense. That would explain if the AI underlying the Integra and Overmind products is Google Gemini. That would make perfect sense. That'd be fantastic. If Google wants to integrate Gemini with crypto and Charles has gotten them to choose Cardano to do that, that sounds fantastic. We'll take it. And I think we can, if we are talking about a Fortune 5 and not a 500, then that would all make sense. So man, I hope you guys just pieced it all together and that's actually what is happening, because that would sound great. If Google Gemini is underlying an AI product called Overmind, and the integration of that product in businesses is called Integra, and underlying it all is Google Gemini, that sounds great to me. I mean, it kind of makes sense for Google too, because Gemini is probably, we all see the Gemini search results when we Google things, but aside from that, Gemini, you kind of hear the least about of, some of the bigger AI platforms. You know what I mean? I don't hear a ton of people being like, I love Gemini, but I hate, OpenAI and Grok. You hear a lot more about those other ecosystems. So, okay. I hope everybody is having a great week. I really do think we should call out the other ecosystems for doing this like anti-crypto stuff, all the fraud, all the lying, all the manipulation. I really think we should call them out just to make it clear that we're different. We're not a part of all that. But I hope everybody is having a great week. I hope you're looking forward to a good rest of the week, and I will talk to you soon.